These are Sole Runner shoes. The model is, I don't know, model. These are a German company. They're made in India, though, I believe. Um, I'm going to start with a demonstration with my booger hook here. We've got some Ubinos leather LP preservative. And so I'm going to put some in the stitching there. I'm going to put some where it's scuffed in the front here. This will come into relevance later, by the way. And then we'll put some in no man's land where it creases on the toe. This will be relevant later. Thank you for your attention. So for the outsole, we'll start with, oh no we won't, we'll start with weight. Everybody cares about the weight. So these are barefoot shoes, which means they're not supposed to be lift in the front or back. It's supposed to be even. And it's supposed to simulate walking barefoot more, which usually means they're lightweight. So we have 517 grams, or 253 for one. These have the factory polyester wool insole. Shit. Okay, and so now we're going to go to freedom measurement. 1 pound and 2 ounces for both. 8.9 ounces for one. So, these are, by the way, size 43 European, and I am a size 10 men's US. So that usually translates to, I don't know, UK, you'll just do the translation on your own time. We'll start out with the outsole. I would say it's, reasonable outsole for traction. I wouldn't really expect anything great. I slid around in dry rock a little bit with them. I would probably, I don't know, 2 or 3. I wouldn't really be expecting to be, crawling through dense woodland jungle in a pair of shoes like these anyways. I probably have about 100 miles on mine. You can see there's a little bit of wear on the kind of heel step there. Probably only a couple millimeters there, maybe 3, maybe 4 max for that tread. Doesn't seem like the tread was really given a lot of, type of design. I've never seen a type, all I'm going to say is I've never seen a type of tread like this, so I'm not really sure what the design is for, but it's pretty smooth here. I'm guessing the design's meant to be more for durability rather than traction, so you're not getting like a soft rubber that's a little bit more grippy. Seems like you're more getting a hard rubber that's meant more for lasting the mileage, which it's basically more for casual wear. The one con I will say is, well, it starts with a pro. I do like when these minimalist shoes are stitched. It's glued as well. As you can see here, where it bends, it probably should be kind of cut down and up. Let me give you an example. So these here are cut lower. Where it bends, you bend, and it kind of flows along that pattern there, because you just kind of want it more flat, like a welted sole, where it flexes, in my opinion. Whereas these are more like that, and so what happens is when you bend, it kind of curves it out like that at a triangle, and then eventually you get the, you can see peeling with the glue there. So that's just something to note. Usually once it peels with the glue, you can get water that goes inside because the stitching is not going to prevent water as well as glue would be. But regardless, do I think it's going to fall out for that reason? No, because you do have the stitching holding it there, but it is a weak point. The one weak point con I would say is this right here. So let's bring out the Vivos. Again, if you look at the Vivo stitching here, it is inset from that top to bottom. So you barely have any scuffing, maybe right there, but it's not broken the stitch. These are some thick stitched bad boys. So these ones though, I've seen at least one of the stitches break, but it hasn't compromised the durability. But I think it's right there, for 100 miles, these are going to wear out pretty quick. And again, this is my size. These aren't too long. It's just a weak point. And when the stitches go, you'll eventually get the glue delaminating, and then you'll have problems down the line. So I would get some type of glue with any of these type of shoes to repair them yourself. I'll try to link the one I use in the bottom. I don't use shoe glue. I don't find it works very well, but it's just something that you'll have to note down the way. I think I mentioned this, but I'm going to say it again. I think these only last about 500 to 800 miles. Again, you're compromising because it's a pair of barefoot shoes, so you're compromising in terms of you're trying to get something that's lighter weight, that's no lift in the front or back, that's supposed to simulate like a foot experience type of thing. So you really, I mean, I think they say with running shoes, expect 500 miles. So you'll get about that, if not a little bit more, before they're shot. So, and again, I think I've got about 100 on these. I think that covers the outsole. Let's focus on the upper. Which shoe do we do the demonstration on? So for the leather, I am not super impressed with the upper leather. I think it's a weird shoe where I think the upper would possibly die before the lower does. As you can see on the front here, we have quite a bit of scuffing for just 100 miles. At first, I was convinced these, and I was actually doing this demonstration for myself, by the way, but I was convinced that this was a plastic coated leather. So it was genuine leather, but with a plastic coating. And the reason they would do that is because it would serve as a water deterrent with that plastic layer. The problem with that is a plastic conditioner would not breathe, period, but the scuffs would breathe, and the scuffs would also allow water through. So it would be kind of a weird catch-22 that you'd have an unbreathable boot that would let water in. But now that I've applied this leather conditioner, I've actually kind of shocked because it absorbed it in this part. The reason I did the stitching is that usually you would actually get absorption in the stitching, even if it was a plastic coated leather, and I would get absorption in the scuff because it's scrubbed off the plastic coated leather. But you can see actually that leather here has actually absorbed it. So I do think that it's a genuine leather. That I think it just has this weird, that pattern is probably like embossed on, which means that they have some type of press that gives it this leathery look. That or it's some type of water buffalo or something that does have a grain like that. Kind of what I was talking about before, I shouldn't have used Obanoffs, by the way. I was just trying to test it for absorption. I usually recommend this. These leathers don't absorb as well as Obanoffs. Obanoffs typically last longer, and it's a stronger leather to preserve the leather and make it waterproof. But waxes can get in the glue and delaminate them. So it would compromise that glue over time. So this one is a water-based one. It wouldn't penetrate as well, but it's a conditioner that I would recommend. In other words, a company like Loa that does have like a glued-on rubber bumper type of deal. They usually, I think they void. I don't know if they still do. I think they void your warranty if you don't use their conditioner because there's so many people's the rubber parts come unglued from the conditioner. So I think that about covers it for leather. Yeah, I mean, again, just the thing I don't like about it is it scuffs so easily. And the preservative does actually make it not look so crappy. So I guess that's a good thing. But it doesn't look good. If I was the company, I would change out the upper leather to something that looks a little bit better, even if it gets marks on it. I've got quite a bit of marks on this one. This one I've used probably 500 or more miles, and usually the conditioner hides the scuffs pretty well. And again, this one I actually used for work. Like this one, I used much more casually. So that's my thing for the leather. I would change it out. The other problem I have, it's either the leather or it's the foam, or not foam, the mesh underneath. This shoe does not, this is why I was convinced it was plastic leather. It does not breathe well. This is, for a shoe, you typically want something that would breathe fairly decently. In leather shoes, like they're already out of a 5, they're kind of capped at 3 because the way I typically will use a leather shoe, like the Vivo Barefoots, is I know it's going to get soaked in there at some point, not from the outside, but from the inside sweat. But the leather will soak it up. I'll take the boot off, and then overnight or over the next few days, it'll dry out, and then it's totally fine. So it kind of is like, it works for X amount of hours. But these ones, I don't know what it is. They are a warm running shoe, or a warm shoe. Now, again, I don't know if the mesh, you just don't think it would be that, but maybe it's just because the leather doesn't absorb sweat very well. I just don't know. They do use a, like I said, it's not wool. It looks like wool, but it's a polyester. This sucks. It does not breathe well. It's too stiff. I have other insoles. I have this Canadian wool one. It's much thicker. But it will soak up sweat. It regulates temperature. You know, it's kind of like when you wear fleece. Something about fleece does not, what is it? I mean, fleece just doesn't, fleece is really good for me, like if you're trying to warm up, but it obviously also means that you're going to sweat faster. And when you sweat, it's going to, you know, what comes next? I mean, you get wet and then it gets colder, etc. The wool at least absorbs it, and the wool stays fairly regulated temperature-wise. You know, for me, a wool sweater has a much bigger range of temperatures that it's comfortable with. I just don't know why they don't go with wool instead of the polyester stuff. I think the polyester sucks. So I don't use these insoles, and like most stock insoles, they suck. I don't recommend using them. Yada yada. I think they have another one that they put a foam underneath, just a foam pad under the heel. But yeah, they both suck because they both use the same polyester wool. So that would probably be my recommended for that. What else did I... The cool thing about these, though, is these are the perfect width boots or shoes. They're perfectly foot shaped. It's like it goes straight up from the ball of the foot to the toe, for me, at least. They're kind of a little bit flexed just because of that. But yeah, I don't have any issues. I don't feel like anything's pushing my toes inward or whatever. And if you do look at the insole here again, you can actually see that it's narrow at the heel and it's wide at the foot. Like that's what all these shoes should be, but none of them are. So it's just the perfect, I can't tell you. I mean, it's just tell you anymore. It's the perfect design. It's a 5 out of 5 for the design. These are the extra wide ones. I don't even think I have an extra wide foot, but for me, they fit perfectly in that regard, even though I think the lacing kind of sucks for the fit. So, and what that translates to is that with this fit, I feel like you can put several insoles in and they'll work fine. These ones tend to be the more chunky insoles that I use, or cork, they're Mindles. That's not as tall as it looks. It's just kind of cupped, as you can see there. It is a little bit lifted though, but I've used these in them. I've used the wool ones in them. So yeah, I don't know what it is, but the volume is perfect. And usually for me, I have a very thin foot, so I need a little bit of volume, meaning I have to add something thicker like that for them to fit better. But even with the stock ones, they fit perfectly. They fit perfectly fine. So yeah, fits 5 out of 5 for me. And the ergonomics are pretty good too. Again, other than I think the lacing sucks, I use, as you can see with the Vivo Barefoots, I use elastic laces all the time. I'm a lazy man, so that's why I got these. I don't know why they didn't just use these lock laces where you tie them up and then you use the thing to tighten it to make it a stronger fit, or lessen it to make it a looser fit. This thing here, it's like Back to the Future design. It doesn't work very well. It just has too much movement in here, and this polyurethane is going to wear out, elastane, whatever it is. And they do have these lock laces underneath, or type of laces, elastic, but they just end there. Like, why didn't you just get rid of this and just use lock laces where you can tighten it and not really. I don't usually comment on aesthetics either, but come on, like, this is a black pair of boots. Why'd you use fucking red here? Like, it just looks goofy. it just takes a boot that would look kind of like semi-professional to looking like semi-dorky. So that's going to be my one comment for that. Yeah, but other than that, yeah, ergonomics and fit is 5 out of 5. I would not size up on these. I've mentioned this in other videos. If you don't have a very good lacing system, means you can't size up very well with them, and still kind of find a way to snug them down to fit better, at least with this model. I did try on a pair of boots that I did not keep for them, and those were the same thing. The boots I did get 44. So I sized up one on those bad boys, and they did not snug very well onto my foot. And I tried adding, extra volume to my foot, and I still had an issue. So again, if you don't have a good lacing system that can kind of go super wide and then fit super snug, typically they just end up too wide, and then your foot feels sort of sloppy in the shoe or boot. And so that's my comment on this. Could I size down on these? A lot of times I do size up because they're not wide enough. I could see myself going with a 42 on these if you really wanted a snug fit, just with the extra wide model, but, and it probably would avoid some of the scuffing on the toe there, but I think I just was fine with my size on these. So next, usually I guess I ask is like, what's the purpose of this shoe for? It's obviously a casual shoe. I don't think this would stand heavy conditions very much. If they had a shoe, I don't know. I just wish they changed the leather, or they made a model that was a shoe that had some type of covering around it that was more durable, because I just think this leather is atrocious. I think the leather is a 2-star. It's just okay. But yeah, I would put a wrap around there because I think it would look a lot better for longer, or I would just change out the leather if I was the manufacturer. But yeah, other than that, it's casual. I usually ask what's the manufacturer's goal, just because, like, if you look at Vivo Barefoot, for example, the other barefoot shoe company, I think they're fashion, ecological, and function also. And, something like these guys I keep referencing, these, I think the function won out over fashion or ecological, and so it ultimately made a good boot, a functional boot. These ones, I just think that I don't think that they're ecological or fashion. I just think that potentially because they chose what was available perhaps in India, that they were a bit limited in their options. I mean, as you saw with the weight, it's a very lightweight boot. Personally, I'm looking for more of a work barefoot shoe, so I wish it was a little bit thicker. I would ideally want at least 1,000 miles from the outsole for the price, especially because I think I paid about $110 to $120 USD for these. And in contrast, you could get a pair of Wittens off of Amazon. Those are about $40. And I think you could potentially get about the same amount of mileage with the Wittens as these. So in terms of value, I think that the Wittens are a better value than these. I will say too, for shipping, these aren't shoes I would recommend for the US, at least at this time, or other parts of the world outside of Europe, because I believe that the way the shipping worked when I paid for them was it was about 100. He took about 100, I think, USD, and then when he shipped them, he paid back the rest. So I think the shipping ended up being more expensive than I would have liked. It would have put it, in the $150 to $200 range, which again just makes it even less of a value compared to the other options. But if you're in Europe, I think they're a reasonable value for a barefoot shoe, knowing that the compromises that you're making for a barefoot shoe. So would I buy these again? No, I would not, because just being in the US, they're too expensive for me to get a hold of. And again, I think the compromises, I think the leather needs to be better. They need to breathe better. The insole sucks, but I usually just change that, so that's usually negligent for me. And then I just wish the outsole lasted just a little bit longer, and I wish they fixed up the stitching. So I think overall, oh man, with the fit, I would probably, if it wasn't for the ergonomics of the fit, I would probably give these a 2 out of 5. But With the ergonomics, I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 just because if that's what your kind of primary goal is as a buyer, I think they're the best I've found for that in terms of just a good fit and a foot-shaped shoe that does feel kind of like you're walking barefoot. You know, they're not forcing a heel cup. You don't have a shank. It's a flexible outsole. So, you know, if that's your primary goal, you are getting a lot with that type of shoe. But with the other things in mind that I've already mentioned a couple times now, yeah, I probably just wouldn't get again. The alternatives, oh man, I don't know. The Wittens, I would probably go with the Wittens if I was looking for a casual shoe, just because the Wittens has a similar, you know, elastic type of shoe like this. It's only $40. And for the price I pay for these, I mean, you get several pairs of Wittens that would definitely last longer than this. The problem with the Wittens is, even though the Wittens are like also a really great foot fit shape, they use a cotton canvas top, so that wouldn't work too well in my environment where it's a lot more wet. So I think that's about it. I guess you could also look at the Vivo Barefoot Raws. They're a lot more expensive, probably twice as much, but would be about the same price if you're buying in the US, considering the price of shipping with these. What else is there? There's also Paper Crane out of Australia. I think those are made in Vietnam. Here, I've got some Franken cranes right now just because I dyed the leather. I didn't want the navy blue. But it's a similar type of low sole option that you would probably get about the same amount of durability out of, maybe a little bit more just because it's very heavy covered in the front and back here. But I will say one thing that would be cool about these if they improved the upper, same thing with the Paper Crane too, because it's kind of a flat outsole. Once this was pretty much worn out, you could actually take it to a cobbler and have it sanded, and they probably could put another outsole. Just, it would thicken it, but you could put another outsole on here to double up on the durability for it. So yeah, they would just sand down all the tread and then slap on. I would probably put a Vibram Mega Grip, just because I think that would be good grip and a decent amount of durability. So, and I don't think it would cost too much, although it might end up costing the price of the shoe if you're in Europe. But yeah, so there's my opinion. You're welcome.